There's a monument on a battlefield in upstate New York. No name on it, no face, no date of birth, no date of death. Just a boot, a carved stone boot resting on a broken cannon. It marks the spot where a man was shot through the leg, the same leg that had already been shattered once before, 2 years earlier, in the snow outside a frozen fortress in Canada. The inscription calls him the most brilliant soldier of the Continental Army. It doesn't say his name, because his name is Benedict Arnold, and history has only ever wanted to remember him for one thing. But here's what most people don't know. Before he became America's most famous traitor, he was, quite possibly, its best general. The men who fought beside him, the men who fought against him, they all agreed on one thing. Without Benedict Arnold, there might not have been a United States at all. So tonight, forget the traitor. Let's talk about the hero. Because to understand how far he fell, you have to understand how high he climbed. April 1775, Massachusetts. A 34-year-old merchant from New Haven, Connecticut, hears the news. Shots fired at Lexington and Concord. The war has started. Most men his age would have stayed behind the counter. Arnold wasn't most men. He was already a captain of a local militia company, a group of well-off young men who liked to drill in fancy uniforms more than they liked to fight. Arnold marched them straight to Boston. But he wasn't there to play soldier. He had a plan already forming in his head, a bold one. There was a British fort, undermanned, isolated, sitting on Lake Champlain. It was called Fort Ticonderoga, and inside its walls were exactly what the ragtag American army desperately needed: cannons, heavy artillery that could turn the siege of Boston. Arnold convinced Massachusetts officials to make him a colonel and send him to take it. There was just one problem. Another man had the same idea. His name was Ethan Allen, and he already had 80 armed frontiersmen, the Green Mountain Boys, marching on the exact same fort. 2 commanders, 1 mission, neither willing to back down. They argued face to face outside the fort walls in the pre-dawn darkness who had the authority, who would lead the attack. In the end, they agreed to go in together, side by side. At dawn on May 10, 1775, they stormed the fort. It fell in minutes, almost without a shot fired. The garrison was so unprepared, the British commander reportedly answered the door in his nightshirt. It was a small victory, but it mattered. Ticonderoga's cannons would later be dragged 300 miles through the snow to Boston and force the British to abandon the city entirely. Arnold had just delivered his new country its first real strategic win of the war. He'd get almost no credit for it. That pattern, brilliance followed by betrayal, not of his country, but by it, was about to define the next 4 years of his life. By the fall of 1775, Arnold had convinced George Washington himself of something audacious, that America should invade Canada, not defend, invade. Washington gave him 1,100 men and 1 mission: march through the wilderness of Maine and take the city of Quebec before winter set in. There was no road, there was barely a map. What followed was one of the most brutal marches in American military history. Arnold's men hauled boats up rivers choked with rapids. They marched through swamps that swallowed men to their waists. Food ran out. Some men were reduced to eating shoe leather, boiled and softened just to have something in their stomachs. Disease tore through the ranks. An entire division turned back, abandoning Arnold entirely. By the time the survivors reached the outskirts of Quebec, barely 600 of the original 1,100 remained. They looked less like an army and more like ghosts. And Arnold looked at what was left of his force, starving, freezing, half their number gone, and decided to attack a fortified city anyway. New Year's Eve, 1775, a blinding snowstorm. Arnold led his men through the narrow streets of Quebec's lower town in the dark, gunfire cracking from every window and rooftop. A musket ball tore through his leg. Down he went, blood pooling in the snow, and had to be dragged from the battlefield by his own soldiers. The attack failed. His commanding officer, Richard Montgomery, was killed outright. But Arnold, bleeding, unable to stand, refused to retreat. He held the siege lines outside Quebec for months afterwards, propped on a makeshift camp bed, still directing the war from where he lay. For that leg wound, and for the sheer audacity of the attempt, Congress promoted him to brigadier general. It was the first time the war took a piece of him. It would not be the last. The British needed one thing to crush the rebellion in its cradle: control of Lake Champlain, the water highway connecting Canada to New York. Standing in their way was nothing. America had no navy on that lake, not one ship. So he built one from scratch in the forest. He assembled shipwrights, felled trees, and in a matter of months hammered together a scrappy fleet of gunboats, barely more than floating gun platforms, crewed by soldiers who'd never set foot on a warship in their lives. On October 11, 1776, that fleet met the British Navy at a place called Valcour Island, and it was never a fair fight. The British had more ships, more guns, more trained sailors. Arnold lost the battle, badly. Most of his fleet was destroyed or scuttled. But here's the trick. The entire point had never been to win. It was to delay. Every day the British spent fighting Arnold's makeshift navy was a day they weren't marching on the Hudson Valley. By the time the smoke cleared, it was too late for the season for the British to press their advantage. They pulled back to Canada for the winter. Historians would later call it one of the most consequential defeats in American military history, a battle Arnold lost that may have won the war. Here's where we have to stop, because this is the version of Benedict Arnold that history buried, not the traitor, not the name that became a synonym for betrayal in the American language itself. This, Ticonderoga, the march through Maine, Valcour Island, the broken leg at Saratoga, this is the man who, by every measure his fellow officers used, should be standing in bronze in Washington, D.C. right now. Washington believed in him. His soldiers followed him into gunfire, into starvation, into a battle they had no orders to fight. The British feared him more than almost any other American commander in the field. And yet, twice passed over, publicly humiliated by a rival general who stole his credit at the most important battle of the war, left to recover from a devastating wound while men he outranked in skill, if not in politics, were promoted above him? Somewhere in that gap between what he had earned and what he was given, something in Benedict Arnold started to change. That is where this story ends, and the one everybody already knows begins. The next chapter of his life is the one you've heard: West Point, Peggy Shippen, Major Andre, and the letter hidden in a boot. But maybe before you get there, it's worth remembering the boot on that other monument, the one with no name on it, standing on a battlefield he helped win for a country that in the end made him feel like it never really belonged to it.